and welcome to another episode of Schiffbauer Over Rocks. We got Dane Fahnestock here today. That's a mouthful, man. So, Dane, why don't you tell the story? We actually know each other. We met at a little event last year. You want to tell that before we go into who you are?
We did, yeah. So that was last year in Mechanicsburg. My now business partner on the recruiting side, Kristen Pucci, had an event for her consulting company, and Wayne was there from Casta Cigars.
Shout out Wayne Berg.
Yeah, and
I can't believe he's 87.
we were ripping up, I think, the Buffalo Trace at the bar.
We were getting after it at the time.
And decided at one point that the table games inside were too much, so we're just smoking outside. And we bumped into each other, and
I think you literally said that it was just too much.
yeah. And the charcuterie board was ridiculous.
It was an immaculate spread. Pucci knows how to throw a party, I must say.
It had a bunch of purple stuff on it that I don't know what it was. So then started talking outside, started talking to Wayne, and then I don't remember I was either down here playing golf or down here for business, and stopped in the shop a day or two
Literally
later.
the next day.
Yeah.
It was like clockwork. You're like, dude. And I'm like, dude. You're like, you remember me? I'm like, yeah. We were like chopping it up last night.
Right. And then there's another guy from the event, I think Kevin, was in here as well, right in front of me, and he dropped a business card. So Wayne made quite the impression, and then ever since we started talking, we hung out back in the courtyard here, and just kept it going since then. Talked a lot of business, and decided to do some marketing stuff.
Yeah, no, it's just kicking off here, but it's been fun so far.
Right.
So I know you mentioned you have a recruiting business and you have a background in that, but you really have an in-depth background with construction through, going way back. Mm-hmm. Tell a little bit, what are you doing now with that business?
Yeah, so now we're doing a lot of things. We're doing some construction coaching, right? That's me individually, utilizing 20 years of experience here locally in remodeling, restoration, and new construction. Helping some smaller contractors with systems, processes, things like that. And then really beyond that's more of a passion project. The core focus would be actually helping homeowners get to a spot where they're not sure. Hey, they know they want to improve their space, right? Mm-hmm. So almost kind of think design, build, remodeling, where you're like, hey, I want to put an addition on. I want to improve my house, but I don't know exactly what we're going to do, right? So we would come in using our expertise and our team, be able to design that for you. Mm-hmm. Say, hey, Paul, okay, hey, what do you want? You want a 20 by 40? Is it a monster? Is this a 40 by 60 edition? Like, what is this? We'd be able to put pen to paper, get you some drawings, get you some budget numbers, and walk soup to nuts through that process. And we have probably more of a detailed upfront pre-construction process than most other residential guys would have or gals.
Feel free to tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so
especially for people listening out there.
Pre-construction is all about planning, right? So we are very much believers in slow is fast, right? So slow up front and a lot of attention to details.
I picked that up just in general too, with you as a professional and a person, Dane.
Right.
Which it really integrated, like, I feel like, across your life.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
in a good way.
Right. So we want to figure out as much as we possibly can. Now, I was at a friend of mine and a customer's house yesterday, and I was like, hey, about the only thing that we came out of that meeting, we don't know what the doorstop is, but we have some 2 higher end remodels, and we know exactly what everything else is going to be. So getting that dialed in, we like to order all the material up front and warehouse that in our shop, right?
Okay.
So that's a big differentiator for us. I don't want to be waiting for material and then say, hey, Paul, guess what? I'm sorry. The vanity didn't come in, or your kitchen cabinets didn't come in.
It's a huge bottleneck, I hear, for folks in your space. It's like scope creep, I like to say, like my line of work, where you're doing this contracting work, and all of a sudden, like, well, those cabinets we're looking at, they're 3 times the price, I have to quote you. Right. And then the expectations are completely misaligned at that point then with the customer.
Yep. So that's another point as well. I mean, we're in a very volatile price market. It's settled down substantially from when it was in COVID, but in COVID, suppliers sometimes were only wanting to hold price for a matter of days. Mm-hmm. So we're coming out of an environment where they would hold a price for 30 days, and then they say, hey, a 3-day turnaround. This price is good for 3 days. So that does play into it as well. Being able to order that up front, be able to capture price points before they may go up. And then also you can strategically plan around events like appliances, for example. any big holidays. Like that's an advantage to take care of. All those sales at a lot of the major appliance distributors happen on the holidays. So if you can time certain things right based on your industry experience, you can take that budget they have and make sure it fits into that box as much as possible.
Now, the entity, D56, the brand. I remember when we first linked up, we just started working together here late last year.
Yeah.
What's in a name? You got to tell me about that.
Yeah, so this
It's
is
interesting.
This is the number one thing I wanted to talk about today, right?
We've been talking about it.
I get excited about it. But so D56, I go the whole way back to really my parents. I have 4 younger sisters, right? I'm born in '84, and I have twin sisters born in '88, and 2 sisters born between that. So my parents had a lot on their hands, and my grandparents were very heavily involved in our upbringing. And I was always very drawn to my grandfather because he had a ton of patience, right? And I'm very entrepreneurial, and I'm self-aware enough to sit here and say that patience is not one of my strongest attributes.
I think patience, not to get sidetracked, is a skill you can develop over time. People say they don't have patience.
Yes.
I thought I did at one point, but I feel like as I got older, I realized it's really a skill you can like work on.
I'm working on it. But so anyway, so I always gravitated to my dad is very much like me, not a super patient guy. My grandfather was always very patient, so I resonated with the relationship with my grandfather. Not that I love my dad, get along with my dad, but my grandfather and I had a special connection because of the patience that he exhibited with me. And so his number one thing I remember him that stuck out to me was he always called himself Dave of 56, right? So
okay.
He went to the Milton Hershey School. He was one of 11, and his father passed away, I believe, when he was 4 years old. So he had to make a tough decision. His mom sent him, a couple of other siblings to the Milton Hershey School, so he had to go away from home, go there, and then he ended up being the class president of the 1956 Milton Hershey class.
Okay.
And so when I branded D56, it was right around the time he passed away a couple of years ago. And one of my parting things to him was I always wanted to make him proud, right? So number one, I just wanted to make him proud. And, my expertise is in construction. And I felt like the impact that I could make on the community and everyone around me through construction and delivering the top tier communication, service, quality, would allow me to make him proud, right? So had an original logo. It had a Old English D because he was a Detroit Tigers fan.
Very old English.
Yeah.
It was like almost throwback Detroit Tigers like font.
It was very close, right? So no copyright, trademark infringements, but it was close.
Yeah, you don't want to get a nasty letter to the mail.
Yes. So I had that going on, and it was black and white. So an assistant of mine had drafted that, and it served its purpose for a little while, but I always was left feeling like there was more that we could do with that. So over the last few months, you and I started talking, and I was like, hey, like, here's my vision for this logo, and here's how I want to tie it in. And you had sent me some great brainstorming emails on how to pull those thoughts out and bring them to life. So,
it's to me, those projects are really fun to me because, we primarily focus on marketing and Schiffbauer Consulting Group, but when you can really partner up with someone like Dane and D56 and where you wanted to go, like essentially write the next chapter of that brand and its heritage. To me, that's really exciting to be able to work with entrepreneurs to kind of actualize that vision.
Right. Yeah. So it was very powerful for me. I remember reading through your first email and being like, oh man, this is going to be good stuff. Right. And starting to action that. I remember I'm a pen and paper guy first, right? So I got my notebook out, started writing, and then
that's how I am, dude. It's just like whenever like numbers. Well, we met that one time before we like linked up. You're like sketching out like if this works out, we're gonna do. I'm like, nah, this guy thinks like me. This is this can be perfect.
So I started writing it out, and then I remember like looking at that and be like, that's not it. And I remember like crossing it out, like I'm starting over. And then I had something that I really liked. And ironically enough, I started typing it back into an email to you. And as I was typing the email, I was like, that's not it either. Right? So then the last version of kind of what I spit out to you was kind of an on-the-fly revision of that final email. And it was pretty close to what we have now, which is on my hat. And, we took, it was the core of my vision was always to take some of his handwriting and incorporate it into the logo. My wife had been gracious enough to work with him kind of over the last couple of years when he was having some health issues, to put together some flyers for him and some stuff like that. My wife is very artsy and craftsy, and so she had to save some letters. He would write her like these little letters and notes and say, hey, can you do this and call this person? And so I was able to take those, scan those, get them over to your team, and what we ended up with was a D that's very similar to how I handwrite a D. And the 5 and the 6 are exactly how my grandfather wrote a 5 and a 6.
Connecting that legacy, which is really cool when you say it out loud right now. Yeah. It's actually really fucking cool.
Yeah. So I was able to, I got the question today, actually. So I have an active consulting engagement here in the city of York, construction, real estate focused. And the project manager I was working with was like, hey, you never told me the story about D56. So, this is the second time I've told the story today. Obviously, this may be a little bit larger platform, but it's very awesome to tell that story, knowing that, hey, like my grandfather will live on as long as D56 is around. And that was kind of the point. Yeah, I mean, just telling the story is fulfilling, understanding that, hey, that's going to be on, our company trucks. It's going to be our company gear. We just, we talked about the swag order. I just got in with the hats and shirts, and I'm still defining my personal purpose, but
that's something, man, that you constantly are going to be developing in your own journey. Yep. That's what I realized recently. Never ends.
Yeah, no, it definitely never ends. My broad purpose was, like I said before, just to kind of make him proud, right? And then what I realized is, hey, that is a little broad, right? How do I...
It's like, what is defining proud to uphold your grandfather's legacy?
Right.
Because that could be to what degree,
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm working through now. There's been all sorts of stuff. I think I told you before, like there's that one exercise that my personal trainer actually shared with me, Zach from Thrive Fitness. And it was writing my eulogy and working backwards.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Right. So you're actively...
So I haven't. So yeah, I mean, I've looked at it. I've worked through parts and pieces of it. I've yet to complete it, right? But a lot of it is kind of go to the end, right? So it's a fairly morbid concept, but it's also reality. Right?
It's the one thing that's absolute in human existence.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's absolute, truly.
Yeah. So take a look at that, and then really puts a new frame of mind in place, right? Because you're like, okay, hey, it allows you to see every facet of your life and what is contributing to what you want to be in your eulogy and what's detracting from
what's not there, obviously, right now. It's like there's a gap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's only so much time and energy for everything, right? So making some difficult decisions, whether they're relationship-based or in people in your life at some point, probably have to go, or certain activities and things like that. So it's been an interesting journey that I've been on for the last few months, trying to take this D56 concept to the next level, identify really what I could do to fulfill a more detailed and impactful purpose as I continue on.
What are your thoughts on, because you have a lot going on, and this has been a thought in my life that might have some resonance with you, Dane. It's just the momentum in life. You got this business, that business. This is going on with the family. It's just, sometimes I feel like for me in the past, I've gotten caught up in my own momentum, and that's when you slip up, or you develop bad habits, or you do something where it's like you're distracted from the goal.
Yep. No, so I mean, I actually was just listening to a Huberman podcast the other day, and they said the best thing you can do to achieve your goals is narrow your focus.
Yeah.
Right. So that really resonates.
I mean, straightforward, but it's...
Yeah. So I find myself if I find myself feeling overwhelmed, if I find myself not achieving what I want to achieve, it's typically because my focus has gotten too broad, and I'm opening too many doors in my life at the same time, right? And some of that comes from my personality and being an optimist and thinking I can take on and
do everything
things and do it. But really, I mean, lately for me, what it's boiled down to is family, health, and business, right? And I know that, I haven't missed one of my daughter's practices or games in a very long time. And, my wife just had some health issues, made sure that came first, not super cool to admit, but in years past, like there were some times where I chose business over, taking her to the doctor or things like that.
I think that takes a lot of growth, the fact that you can openly admit that, that fault. Because a lot of people, they can't, regardless of that fault might be.
Right. So, I mean, another part of that is just like, hey, I'm at a spot now where my confidence continues to grow, and it's, I don't feel like I really owe anything to anybody. So,
that's got to be a hell of a fucking feeling.
Yeah. I mean, if I can say, hey, yeah, in terms of being a husband, a father, a businessman, I've certainly haven't been perfect, and I certainly am committed now to learning from those mistakes. I'll continue to learn from my mistakes, and just fail forward in the best way that I can. So, just having that mentality of focusing on my family first for really the first time in a very long time, it has made a world of difference in just our family dynamic, over the past quarter or so, which it's been great.
It's interesting with that being a cornerstone even further now in your life, when you're with narrowing your focus on that family first. Yep. It's your D56. It's family heritage,
right?
It's true alignment, just from outside of talking to you right now,
right?
If it truly is family first, well, it is family first.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think as I was growing my professional career, I heard a lot of these things that people would say, and I was like, oh, that's cool. You can say that, but it's not true, right? Like, take care of your health first, or take care of your family first, and the other stuff will come, right? So I was like, no. Like, that. Yeah, sure. You can say that. That's fine, but you're in a different position. That doesn't apply to me. Right.
I can do it.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. It was, hey, no matter what, I'll get there someday. But for right now, I just got to. I mean, I got to put my head down and I got to work as much as I can, and at some point, I'll come on the other side of this. Right. And that just ended up being a never-ending cycle in my life. Right. So it's like, okay, hey, at some point,
I like to tell people it's called a crash out. You don't literally crash, but things slip. It could be minor, but it's you crash out thinking you can do it all.
Right. So just being able to realize, okay, hey, let's take a step back from that. Let's understand what is going to allow me to get to that spot, right? And there's some diet things related, some lifestyle things, some difficult things I had to admit, right? Okay, hey, I was I'm a big fan of the book Leadership and Self-Deception. A former coach of mine, Howard Shore, put that on me a few years ago, and was like, you need to read this. And that's been a game-changing moment for me. Now I still recommend that to people, but it talks about self-deception and deceiving yourself, right? So just really being honest with yourself, and I guess it's at its highest level, understanding that you really can't change anybody else. Right? You can just change yourself.
That's profound.
And if you change yourself, you can change the world. And
how if you change yourself, the perception of yourself from others changes.
Right.
In one way or another.
Yeah.
Even if we can't fully control it, you can control only what you can control.
Exactly. Yeah. So just taking on, some of those, really embodying some of those mindsets and being intentional about things that I thought previously were beyond me and I wasn't quite ready for.
Yeah.
Right. Have made the world a difference.
That was deep. What's your favorite book?
It's a great question.
I totally threw that at you, but this.
So right now I can't say that I'm the whole way through. I'm reading Who Not How right now. That is making a profound impact in how I'm approaching business. Dan Sullivan book. Really, I would have to say probably right now Leadership and Self-Deception would probably be my favorite book, the one I mentioned earlier.
Okay, I'm going to have to check that out.
Just because it applies to both business and family. It might be the only book that I cried reading.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah.
I hope you left that on an Amazon review.
Yeah. So, I mean, it talks about, I don't know if it's a real company or a bad company, but it talks about a company that really just embodies, culture first and not being in the box towards people. And the difference would be, if you're in the box, you're thinking about yourself first, versus if you're outside of the box, you're understanding everyone is a human, everyone has human elements, and they have needs, and being empathetic.
Where I feel like you're less defensive if you take that mentality. Because if you just think of your own self-interest, or your standards, that's when we get defensive thinking in the box. If that lines up to what he's advocating in that book.
And so this guy throughout this book, this guy learns this concept from the CEO and another high-level manager, I believe, at the company. And they're not just teaching him for his corporate professional life. They're teaching him for his personal life, right? Because he's looking at home, well, I don't get along with my wife because of, and I don't get along with my son because of, right? So the book was just an eye-opener in how your own thoughts about how you interact with the world are very limiting in some regards, both in personal and professional. And if you can take a step back and understand that naturally you're going to want to self-deceive yourself and tell yourself little stories and lies about why you're doing things to self-justify them.
It's kind of like when you're a kid playing games and you lose the game, or like pick up basketball. You're like, oh, well, you got the rebound or you shoved me.
Right.
Like you start making excuses for the game.
Exactly.
At that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, that happened. I think I used the book last night because I took my daughter to basketball practice, and she got upset because she wasn't getting the ball, right? And she was getting upset on the court. And she looked over, and I could see she was pissed, and she's stomping around the court.
Yeah, you can just tell. It's completely visible.
So they get a water break. She comes over, and I'm like, hey, look, what do you want? She's like, no one will give me the ball, right? And I'm like, okay, Kenley. Let's talk about this for a second, right? What are you doing without the ball? And a light bulb went off, right? So next thing I know, she's running around, and in the last 10 minutes of her scrimmage, she gets 3 passes, right? So it's like, okay.
Because she's doing the things to essentially help out.
Because instead of blaming others, essentially.
How can I help out this community, my team at this point?
What can I do differently to impact the situation, right? And then that's that book. It's made a profound impact for me. I'll often lose sight of it. It's human nature, right? And then I'll be like,
we all do. Regardless if we're talking about it right now, you and I are still going to slip up and slide into those thoughts at times.
Yeah, nobody's perfect, but just talking about it, communication is huge too. Just being able to talk about it, being vulnerable, being transparent will do wonders for those relationships, both in business and in personal relationships too.
So, a proposed question to you, because I thought it was really fascinating, the concept of the book, like intermarrying like family dynamics, like giving examples about like relationships. Right. I believe business is personal. They're interconnected. There's some schools of thought where it's like, nope, separate. I'm like, it's all interconnected,
right?
If you believe it or not.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
So I've been part of a peer network for a couple of years, and that's something we really like analyze when we sit down. It's like, how's your business life? Good, bad, ugly. How's the people in your life? Wife, kids for you. Yeah. Close family members, friends. And then how are you doing? Because it's all literally drawn out in a triangle. Yeah. Because it's all tied together at the end of the day, even if we like it or not.
Same thing happens. Yeah. So I'm in the Vistage peer group. Right?
Very similar concept.
Same. Yeah. So we go through, and I think it's, hey, we give a score on personal, professional, and health. Right, so those are the 3 staples, and then we bring something. If something's eating at us and we need to talk through an issue, then we bring it up and we get the perspective of the other people, probably very similar to your group. So yeah, I mean, I think they're all connected. I don't think it's not possible to be true or fulfilled if you're just one of those buckets is full. Yeah,
because I feel like there's always something left at the table if you have an empty bucket in some regard.
Yeah,
it's like it's what's lacking.
Yeah, 100%.
What are you most excited for right now? I know this brand, it's refresh and it's a sense of newness.
Really excited to just bring the D56 vision to life. That I had told you about. I mean, I think I have a unique blend in having high level executive level experience in construction, restoration, real estate, executive coaching. Have worked with a lot of really great coaches to date. So taking all of that and building an organization that's really able to make an impact here locally first. And then really we have one guy on board now who is really, I mean, even more forward thinking. I'm forward thinking in terms of the construction space of things, right? He's forward thinking in terms of AI and the technology and all of that type of stuff. So being able to take, the pen and paper guy that I am and the Excel spreadsheet breakdowns and things like that, say, okay, hey, how do we bring this into 2025? Like, what does this look like then with, there's all types of 3D modeling, 2D modeling softwares out there. AI is writing our scope of works already, right? So we're not integrating it across massive platforms, but we have pieces of AI that's implemented in our systems for construction, which probably sounds odd to most out there, knowing what a contractor
does
and looks like, and the horror stories of the communication and the overdue projects and the change orders and things like that, right? So I guess if I could sum that up is we really want to change the game in those spaces. And I'm building a team that's really dedicated to that vision, and to date, every person on the team will do anything they could to support it, right? So that's very fulfilling, and I know that we're still a couple pieces away, right? Especially reading that Who Not How book. Like I've stopped thinking, how am I going to do this and how am I going to do that? And there's other people out there that will likely be attracted to this vision because it's a very compelling vision, and hopefully they'll join the team and be able to propel this to a national, impactful game changer.
Which leads into a question I was about to ask you.
Yep.
Talk about earlier, and that still blows my mind about the eulogy exercise,
Yep.
which is something I'm going to be thinking about probably all fucking weekend now, because that put me through a loop, ladies and gentlemen, in a great way.
Yeah.
It's profound. I'm going to send my mentor and a friend of mine, Mike Tish, that concept for his groups.
Yeah.
At least throw it out there. But I was going to ask you. So it's like working backwards. It's like what's the vision of D56 10 years from now? I was about to ask you that, and then you said nation. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. 10 years from now would be to have a game-changing platform out there that would allow for a cutting-edge process to get from a marketing lead to construction faster than anyone else in the market, and more detailed, with being able at some point to have a brand promise guarantee of either no change orders or very, very little change orders. Being able to take the detail at which we operate right now, the cost is time, right? We're doing it very manually using my expertise. We're planning, we're taking all of that, and we're saying, hey, Paul, like, I'm not your guy if you want me running in here next week and start an addition for you, right? Like, I can't with permits, but we're not a run and gun type of.
You're not one of these Facebook group tag kind of companies,
right? No. So
hey, I need a modeling quote. Oh,
47 comments later.
I'm looking for a fairly priced contractor.
Yeah. So no, I mean, 10 years from now it would be, hey, that we have a system here that we are changing the game locally. Mm-hmm. That,
you just got me more fired up to be
working
working with you.
Right?
I was already pretty fired up.
that we can take nationally and be able to teach other, whether they're in real estate flipping houses, whether they're in remodeling, whether they're in new construction, whether they're in restoration. We have most of the pieces on the ship, or most of the people on the ship right now, and we have the dedication and the hard work to be able to do that. It's certainly not going to be easy, but that would be in 10 years. We would like to be serving a national market with a cutting edge project or product.
It's essentially taking the D56 process, if you will, and productizing it in some capacity.
Yes.
There's only probably so much we can say on the air about this from a client privilege standpoint, ladies and gentlemen. But Dane's is giving out the secret sauce like Wagyu right now,
right.
Or Ragu rather.
So yeah, I mean, I think I haven't been the greatest so far. Some of our client testimonials, stuff like that, we've talked about that. We're getting some really rave reviews in.
Dude, we all start at a base level.
Yeah.
I beat myself up all the time.
Yeah.
And I thought about it as this the other night. It's a quote I came across. Another client of mine, Judd Gimmel, shared it like on Instagram. We follow each other. He's just talking about like it's very hard to like beat someone who's not going to give up and put in work every day in some capacity. I'm paraphrasing, but
Right.
and I think about holy shit, how much I've done and like collectively my team has done for the community in 6 years, almost full time doing this. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
For essentially, well, me, Marty behind the camera on a couple projects here and there, and then Digital John out in Scottsdale, Arizona. Shout out to him.
Right.
It's really fucking cool when you can look back on that. But
no, absolutely, man. I think as we move forward and look at how we're going to impact this space, one of the challenges that we face, to your point, is we have a standard in D56, right? And our first bullet point on our standard is hustle, right? And not hustle in a way that we're gonna.
that needs to be on the website's about page. I'm serious.
Yeah, and we can talk about that. But so as we're adding people to this proverbial ship that I'm talking about, right? I was talking to my wife the other night in the kitchen, and I'm like, hey, like we're talking to some people, and I said, hey, like it's hard to keep up with our crew, right? Not necessarily just me, but our crew. Like we work hard. And she looked at me and she was like, well, hey, like you are the hardest working person I know, right? And she was like, if you think you're going to find a group of people that work as hard as you do, like you've got another thing coming.
That's a good challenge by your wife.
So yeah, so it was a couple there was a couple of thoughts I had about that. Number one, it was like one of the best compliments my wife's ever given me. Right, it was awesome.
That is pretty cool
to hear that from her, and know that I have her support too, because I do work a lot, and I wouldn't be able to work the amount that I work right now without her being able to take care of the kids.
I know some of the emails I get from you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the same way. It's reciprocal in a positive, healthy way.
So, and then the other side of it is, okay, hey, like, well, we do have our standard is hustle. Like, does someone have to work? Is it X amount of hours? No. Right. But do they have to have an inner fire and a passion about what they're doing? And they do and to a degree, or whatever it takes, result driven attitude to be on our team? I think the answer is yes. And I think especially COVID, we got into a spot where we were just in this massive hiring spree, and a lot of people were taking whomever and just throwing them on the team, and now we had these layoffs and everything else. But I'm very protective of our team, I guess is what I'm saying.
I'm a firm believer, and let me know if this provides any kind of resonance or if we can talk about it, where when it comes to adding employees and talent, culture is one of, if not the biggest branding like subcomponents of what makes a brand is your culture at a company.
I agree.
It's like, what is that living and breathing or interfacing, even if it's virtual, standard? How do we communicate? How do we expect each other to perform based on what the duties are assigned? What is the culture? And just throwing anyone on the team is not going to get you there necessarily. Sometimes it's like putting, pegs in the wrong hole, if you will.
Yes, I'm a firm believer of that, and that's part of the reason I've been so protective.
Well, I'm glad we fit your culture, Dane.
No. As
a preferred partner.
It does trickle down into. I shouldn't say trickle down. It applies to your third-party vendors too.
It really does, and it eats me up all the time. Where folks are like, "Oh, it's just my agency." I want you to be enthusiastic to work with us, and vice versa. Right. Like, I don't want you to just be another bill. Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, we got to do this for them. Talk to you next quarter.
And I know specifically from recruiting, there's a massive difference between a client that considers you a partner and a client that's an external person. Right? So, and a lot of that would be, to your point, I don't know that you have a culture or a vibe, or that they don't check all the boxes if it's just an external person. Yeah. Right? If they're a partner, that's a whole different level of relationship versus, oh, well, this is my marketing guy. right? So, being able to hold that near and dear, there's some pain involved in that, right? Because what happens, especially at the size of my business right now, I suck up all those dues until I find that person.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just, even too, it's just sometimes like you need somebody to help out, but like, and you know better than probably anyone I could have on this podcast. If you hire the wrong person, it's going to cost you more in the long run, brother.
Absolutely. So, I mean, they always say it's like, I think 2.5 times revenue that you're losing if you have an underperformer in a seat, right?
Yeah.
And then if you turn someone over, there's an absolute real cost to that, right? So at the end of the day, I'd rather operate at less than 100% capacity and do whatever we can do with the people that we have, versus add a wrong team member just as a desperation hire.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen too many agencies that get all excited and they're expanding, and then all of a sudden they're less than what they were 2 years prior. Just because of waste.
Right. I mean, it happens all the time. So it's also, if you have the culture right in your company, it's amazing to see what will happen when you talk about being over capacity. Right. So if you just assume that someone won't do more, I've been guilty of that before, which is, okay, hey, like, I'm overrun. I don't have anywhere for this to go. I'm working from the time I get up to the time I go to sleep. But if I go to, someone on my team and I say, hey, is this something that you'd be willing to take care of first? Like, 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's an A player.
Right. Yeah. And if you build teams of A players, the performing players, right, it's vastly different. You can accomplish way more with less.
Less is more. I know Marty's signaling for last call over there. Dane, is anything else you just want to shoot the shit on before you wrap up here today?
Man,
these cigars are really good.
They are.
They're like extra good today.
Thank you, Wayne, and John for having us up here. Probably the only other thing I would say is a couple things that hit me lately were that golf is a metaphor of life.
Okay, go into that.
And
because I know he's a big golfing guy.
Yeah.
If you ever run into Dane, it's gonna look like he's ready to hit the fairway.
I'm not dressed like that now, but typically I'll dress like I play golf every day. That way, if the time comes, I'm ready to sneak out, I can sneak out. But in golf, you're constantly disappointed, right? So it means almost every shot that you visualize, it'd be more accurate to know that you're going to not hit the shot that you want. And you're always scrambling, you're always recovering, you're always bouncing back from missing an expectation, right? So, and some would say, hey, golf is a game of misses, right? How you manage your misses is how you get through golf the most effective way. So,
which seems like a really negative approach on life,
right? True, it could be, but I think I mentioned earlier, like, failing forward, right?
That's a good point.
So embracing failure and just knowing that, hey, I'm gonna get up here, I'm gonna give it my best shot, and sometimes it's gonna work out, sometimes it's not. And when it's not, I mean, everyone's going to have things that aren't going to work out, right? Business is not linear. That's one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn as an entrepreneur. As much as I want to work through every issue and make it linear, it's not. So bouncing back from those misses, from those mistakes, how you carry yourself, being intentional about it, and focusing on the process and not the result is another big reason why golf is a metaphor for life.
I have a mantra. I really like that analogy. Complete now, by the way. Winning is an event. Winning is a process. It goes back to the whole linear thing. Business not being in that case.
Yep.
It's doing the events over time.
Another book recommendation for you would then be With Winning in Mind.
Okay. Who's that by?
It is. I don't know who it's by, but he was a former gold medalist rifle shooter. And
that already sounds cool.
He applies his process to rifle shooting and golf. And that if you focus on the process of shooting and the process of preparing for a golf shot, you put yourself in a spot to succeed versus focusing on the result.
And that's how you win in life.
Absolutely. Right?
That's rock star.
So the only thing I'll talk about with golf is, for those golf fans out there, Nick Dunlap, right? The Alabama kid just won a PGA event. First time since Mickelson did it in 91. I don't know if his coach said it or if he said it, but The biggest takeaway I have, and obviously all credit to Nick Dunlap on this, is pressure is a privilege. Right? So that resonated so hard with me lately because you're entering seasons of business where we're under a lot of pressure to perform. Our expectations are high. We're setting the bar very, very high for our customers. And it's very easy to get into a mindset where you get negative about yourself, or, oh man, now I have to do this, and now I have to do that, and no, I can't believe this came in that way. I wanted it this way. But if you really view it as pressure as a privilege, and everything that you're looking at is a learning experience, and you're just gaining traction, and you're failing forward, and you just keep going, it's a very powerful mindset to adopt.
I love that.
Yeah.
Honestly, this sounds sick, but like when there's days or weeks that seem a little tighter than others, mm-hmm. I feel like I'm just like punching air, like, because I get a rush out of it. When you knock it out, like,
yeah, oh yeah,
like, nah, like, this is gonna be a lot to overcome. No, we overcame it.
Yeah,
that pressure you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being another way to say it is, and I won't take credit for this one, Visage coach.
You can totally take credit for it.
Be,
Marty's not going to fact check you.
Would be, be a for me leader and not a to me leader, right? So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Mm-hmm. Ask, why is this happening for me? Right?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, Dane, D56 Construction. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk for another 30 minutes after this, folks, but we're going to wrap it up for now. Thank you for tuning in. Check him out. I'll put the links in the bio. And then, you need to work with these guys when it comes for any interior or commercial construction projects because they got the process down.
Thanks, Paul.